Greetings and welcome to Week 2, Unit 2. It is related to credits and credit load of a program. We understood the accreditation framework of the NBA in the last unit for designing any engineering programs in India. In this unit, we'll try to understand what a credit and credit load are. This is somehow still misunderstood in most of the colleges, as we have seen. If you misunderstand the credit, you are likely to get the students into problems. If you look at any aspect of teaching and measurement of teaching and learning, you always have a problem. There are so many variables related to that, you cannot measure anything precisely. For example, whom do you call a good teacher? How do you measure? Whom do you call a good student? For example, good student means whoever has got the maximum percentage marks in that. Is he really the good student? And then, how do you measure the quality of learning? And how do you ensure, for example, I can give a very, very simple examination paper and everybody gets good marks, but then the quality of that assessment is poor. So, but how do you measure? If I take the exam papers as given, from there at least how do I measure the quality of assessment? Is it really representing the your POs and PSOs properly? Even there everything is qualitative, so you cannot exactly lead to a measurement, so-called precise measurement. You can have an idea. For example, if you want to say, can you name a good teacher from your department? Possibly many faculty and students will be able to say so-and-so is a good teacher. But how do I measure? What kind of measurements do I do? And how do I add those marks to say so-and-so is a good teacher? It will become very difficult. And similarly, the so-called credit, the word is used credit hour, is one such variable where you cannot define very precisely, but yet you have to use it. You must have reasonable appreciation of what a credit is, and your design of the curriculum will have to follow within that. But if you say, how do you precisely define? No, you cannot do that. There are too many dimensions, stakeholders and practices. Because anything related to teaching and learning, you have infinite number of variables that come into picture. And you cannot control most of the variables in any way. So to that extent, with so many dimensions, precise measurements are not easy. But right now, anywhere in the world, programs and courses are measured in terms of credits. So let us take a look at where did the word credit come into picture and how it was defined. The origin of this is call it Carnegie Unit. The common US standard behind credit hour calculations derived from the Carnegie Unit concept. Carnegie Unit was introduced by Carnegie Foundation for the advancement of teaching in 1906 as a standard measure of secondary school and later post-secondary student time and work. How much work should a student put? That is the indicative of that measurement. So it was introduced in 1906 and slightly it underwent some modifications, but it was adopted and formalized across US education in the early 20th century itself. Right from 1920s and so on, it is very formalized. And in India, the IITs use the credit system, but many colleges still they wanted to talk about marks, 100 marks for a particular course and so on. They try to add it up and like that. But now, universally in India, all colleges will have to talk in terms of credits. Now, it is good to know where the formal definition has come into picture. Regulatory definition published as a part of Department of Education's program Integrity Final Regulations. The reference is given there. You can go on to the website and take a look at it. The credit hour means an amount of work represented in intended learning outcomes and verified by evidence of a student achievement that is an institutionally established equivalency that reasonably approximate not less than 1 hour of classroom or direct faculty instruction and a minimum of 2 hours out of class student work each week for approximately 15 weeks for one semester. If it is a trimester kind of thing, then you talk about 10 to 12 weeks. Okay. Roughly our present definition in India is also that is 1 hour of classroom per week over a semester is equivalent to 1 credit. If it is a 3 credit course, that means you have 3 contact hours in the classroom with the teacher, and the student has to spend another 6 hours outside the classroom, either doing assignments, reading by himself, spending in the library, or working with his friends on the topics. He needs to spend about 6 hours like that. And of course, in any program, it is not restricted to just classroom work, but you also have laboratory work, internships, practica, studio work, and other academic work leading to the award of credit hours. Even some kind of for example, if you go for an internship, how do you measure in terms of credits? So that definition also has been given. We will come to that at a later stage. Now let us see what India follows. India follows the choice-based credit system, CBCS as it is called. And as per the guidelines from bodies like UGC and AICTE, formally a credit is based on contact, teaching and expected student work for a semester with the common institutional rules below. Typical formal definitions used in India: theory, if it is a lecture based, then 1 credit equal to 1 hour of teaching per week per semester, commonly 15 to 16 week semester. That means you have 15 to 16 contact hours per semester with the teacher in a classroom. Then tutorial credit, if you take, we generally offer sometimes in some courses as tutorials as well. It is also treated like a lecture credit, that is 1 tutorial hour per week equal to 1 credit with 15 to 16 hours per semester. Then practical or laboratory credit, institutions normally assign more contact hours per credit, commonly 1 credit equal to 2 lab hours per week, 30 to 32 lab hours per semester, and through though some universities use 1 credit equal to 3 lab hours per week, because some type of laboratory works requires 3 hours, so still they will call it as 1 credit only, even if it is 3 hours lab. Then you have internship, fieldwork, clinical, credited according to total supervised hours as specified in the university curriculum. Not that the number of hours that you spent in a company but supervised hours. Often 40 to 60 hours per credit are defined by the university, and it is also AICTE norm. Okay. So here in India, a 3 credit theory paper has 45 to 48 lecture hours in semester. A 2 credit lab course, 2 lab hours per week over 15 to 16 weeks. But a 2 credit lab would mean it is equal to 60 to 64 lab hours. Exact hour per credit values vary by university board, UGC, and AICTE. But AICTE, they provide model framework, but each university may slightly differ from this. For example, how do the other countries do? Let us look at Malaysia. In Malaysia, credit represents the notional student workload for a course and is used to measure progress under Malaysian qualification framework. Because having a qualification framework is necessary if two countries want to have any kind of a interaction or collaboration with regard to faculty exchange or courses and so on. Okay, qualification framework is the one that defines it. One unit in Malaysia is a credit, sometimes called credit hour or credit unit, quantifies total student effort required for a course, contact time, lectures, tutorials, and labs, plus private study and assessment. Under the MQF practice, 1 credit ordinarily equals to 40 notional learning hours. This covers all activities across the teaching period. That means if a student is spending 40 notional learning hours in a semester, then it is considered as 1 credit or credit unit. So a 3 credit course therefore implies roughly 120 notional hours, 3 hours of classroom per contact and per week across 13 to 15 week semester plus study assignment time. Because these things will have to be reinterpreted now in today's context using the technology. If you are going for some kind of blended mode of learning, you are not directly face-to-face contact with the teacher. That's why total number of notional hours in learning becomes the key issue in defining a credit. As you can see, each country has a slightly different terminology. In England, credit measures the notional student workload for a module or program and is defined by the credit accumulation and transfer scheme. Key points: unit size equal to 1 CATS credit and 10 notional hours of learning, includes contact time, private study, assessment, and so on. Module sizing, they use the word module. Common module sizes are 15, 20, or 30 credits. A bachelor's with honors typically has to get 360 CATS credits. And when you translate them into number of hours, it roughly becomes the same thing as what we are following in India. Now another sample, in Japan, a credit measures student workload for a course, primarily scheduled contact hours plus expected independent study. Okay. Typical unit, commonly 1 credit, corresponds to about 15 hours of formal classroom instruction delivered across a semester with additional out-of-class study expected. So total number of hours per credit are higher than the contact hours alone. They are not exactly saying how many hours he has to spend outside the classroom. So credit as practiced now In the US system, one semester credit hour typically represents about 1 hour of classroom per week plus 2 hours of out of class student work per week across a standard 15-week semester. As you can see, a few examples that were given, many countries follow similar definitions of credit. So my suggestion, my urge with you is that don't deviate too much in your practice at your institute, because it is universally accepted. We will see there are a lot of implications for this. Still, in spite of all this, still it is an imprecise measure of the amount of or quality of learning, as it is based on number of hours spent by the student. Because first of all, students are different. Okay, a bright student, if he spends similar number of hours, he can learn a lot more and he can learn much better. A poor student, even if he spends that much time, the quality of his learning will not be that high. Let's say compare IIT students with a rural engineering college. So just by following that syllabus, you are not saying that you are equivalent to IIT. Okay. So please keep that in mind. Everywhere, there are so many dimensions to that. Students are different, the faculty are different, resources available are different, and the way the instruction is different. So what happens, the learning by the student in a given amount of time will depend on all these factors. For example, instructional context. The management may give some extra instructions saying that you shall do that. Okay, that will also greatly influence what the student learns. A 3-credit course carrying the same name, same content also, in an institution A and institution B need not result in the same quality level of learning. But at the national level, they would be considered equivalent at the level of awarding degrees. So please do that. So one of the things the college, depending on its status, should not say, I am exactly like some IIT or NIT, because that will lead to actually not making the student comfortable, because if you raise the level in the same amount of time, he cannot do that. His learning starts becoming superficial. Graduates of all programs carrying 150 to 160 credits are considered eligible for placement considerations. They are not equal in terms of their abilities. Okay. Even in the same institution, no students will be exactly equal. They have gone through the same set of courses. Because of their abilities or the amount of work they put in, they will not be exactly equal. For example, colleges who admit lower CET rank need to be particularly careful in designing their curricula. Because in our enthusiasm, if you try to overload the curriculum, put too many topics or too many chapters from a textbook, the student has no chance to master them. And unfortunately in India, when you put a bunch of teachers together to design anything, it looks like they're prone to overload the curricula. They want to teach everything and anything. And when you overload the curricula, it leads to superficial learning, disadvantaging the graduates at the time of placement. You heard the names, you have not engaged with that knowledge. So it takes more time to engage with new knowledge for less able and less motivated students. The courses need to be designed with less content. So if you say instead of 15 chapters, if you restrict yourself to 10 chapters from a textbook, then the student has a chance to spend more time at each level. That is, he can engage more with the concepts and procedures from each chapter, and and he can learn much better. What they learn well is more important than extent of their superficial familiarity. So faculty, please do not overload the curriculum. That is one of the first things that you have to do. You may say all the knowledge is growing so much. How can you not include these topics? Yes, knowledge will continue to grow. There is no limit to the number of the amount of material that you want to address because it is already established. So that is not the purpose of a program. Whatever the student learns, he has to learn well. And also over and above that, this whatever you consider as good learning should get reflected in the assessments. If the assessments are poor, you may have fantastic syllabus or very well designed syllabus. But if assessment is not good, then it doesn't get translated into the quality of learning. Okay. Now, credit in near future. Credit was always formally defined for the past 120 years in terms of the number of hours the student engaged with the new knowledge. Okay, so that has not changed. What happened is in the early part of this century, people all over the world have come together to review whether this concept of credit should be continued or not. So, after about 2 or 3 years of discussion, this group decided whatever vague definition that we have about the credit should be continued. There is no other alternate that they could produce. Now with the technology also coming in, you have an additional issue. With online teaching and blended learning modes becoming more acceptable and popular, the role and duration of classroom needs to be changed. However, one credit can be associated still with 45 hours of students' learning time. Now, technologies are getting developed to enhance the quality of learning at all cognitive levels and even in all the relevant domains of learning. So, more and more technologies will come in near future. They have to be integrated into that. Still, your credit definition remains the same. Now we look at what do you call credit load of a program. US universities use a range of credits for an undergraduate engineering degree of 120 to 130 credits. That's all. Some countries use a range of credits for an undergraduate engineering degree of 130 to 140 credits. Now AICT specifies a range of credits for an undergraduate program as 150 to 160 credits. I have interacted with colleges who are going up to 220 credits for a 4-year program, and both teachers and students were going mad with that. That is because one or two people at the high level, they consider all this will have to be learned, and they keep on increasing the credits. But now there is a rule: you cannot cross 160. It has to be between 150 and 160 credits. AICT also states a student can earn honors or an additional minor engineering by completing an additional 20 credits. These may be acquired through MOOCs, that they have said. Now what happens instead of over and above 160, the student has a capacity to do 20 more credits. He can get an honors degree. And some colleges have already introduced that, but they set some rules. Who can go for these extra 20 credits? If the student is already performing very poor, he cannot merely just go for an additional 20 credits. So each college sets up its own rules in terms of permitting students to take these additional 20 credits. The model curriculum gives a recommended total of 160 credits for many branches, but shows small discipline-specific totals in some tables. Though the model curriculum tells you it is 160 credits. If you go to some specific programs, they may differ slightly. It may become 158 or 157, like that. And then in India, components of engineering curricula are, they're divided into the 7 categories: basic sciences, engineering sciences, humanities and social sciences, professional core courses, professional electives, open electives, projects, industrial training or internship. Now, because of the new NEP requirement of what you call multiple entry, multiple exit possibility, to these 7 curricular components, we need to add one more because of this NEP requirement. This we can call as skill enhancement courses. So now it becomes 8. We'll present in the subsequent units what the skill enhancement programs are. Now comes the much more difficult thing. How do I distribute the credits? Let's say you start with 160. How do I distribute the number of credits among all the 7 or 8 components that we have? Our requirement is program outcomes, program specific outcomes need to be attained. There is no compromise on that. And MEME feature needs to be incorporated. That is also required. That means if a student for some reason leaves the program at the end of first year, he can get a certificate if he passes that. So at least it is more than just merely pre-university qualification. At the end of 2 years, if he leaves, he gets a kind of a diploma. Like that, MEME feature ensures that the students can leave the college with some skills if they have to leave in between. Whereas today, if you look at the curriculum, at the end of first year he leaves, he only attended a few theoretical courses and he doesn't have any skills at all. And another limitation is the present boards of studies are composed of experts, including the outside experts from industry and so on, mainly from the disciplinary area of the branch. So what happens if you are designing, let's say, mechanical engineering? If all experts are from mechanical engineering area, why would they pay adequate attention to open electives or humanities and social sciences and all the POs that are already specified by NBA? So even the constitutional board of studies will have to be somewhat looked at. Now, for example, I can certainly say the present curricula of many institutions are not designed to address PO 6 to PO 11 formally. There is nothing. You may tick some boxes saying that I am addressing in this particular course. But if you look at assessment, if you look at the content, they are not addressing PO 6 to PO 11. And this I'll keep repeating. It should be remembered that knowledge continuously increases exponentially in all areas. All things considered important cannot be included in the professional core. Okay? If a course cannot be related to any course later in a later semester, it is not desirable to include in core. Okay? If you are not using that knowledge in the subsequent courses, what is the point in offering such a course? There are any number of courses that can be offered, but it has to be related to a follow-up course. So again, with all this, no suggested distribution of credits can be unique. There are multiple correct good solutions. If you keep all these criteria and if you put a group of faculty, they should be able to come with their own good solution, which is possibly almost as good as some other solution generated by another group of faculty. So again, we are not saying it is unique. Now, we have to start with at some level. So we suggest a credit distribution, keeping all these criteria in mind. Humanities, Social Sciences and Management, 19 credits. Basic Sciences, 16 credits. This many people won't like. Engineering Sciences, 14 credits. Professional Core, 50 credits. Even though you consider this less, already many colleges have shifted to 50 credit Professional Core. Professional electives, we are making it 24 to give more choice to the students in terms of the way they want to plan their careers. Project and internships, all types of projects and internships, about 16 credits. We'll suggest a solution for 16 credits. Open electives, 9. Skill enhancement courses, 12 credits. Now what happens, we are not insisting that these numbers have to be adhered to, but should not deviate too much from here. Then the spirit of the whole engineering program design will disappear. Okay. Now we will look at each one of these curricular components. The first one is Humanities, Social Sciences and Management. And in the next unit, we will look at what kind of courses can be considered to be offered in this. Thank you very much for your attention.